moving on to Iowa State. Got a good opportunity this week. Excited about a night game. Better get used to it. We got a bunch of them ahead of us, so it'd be good to get into a night game routine. So looking forward to that. So we'll head over to Iowa on Friday and probably just a little bit later than we normally do. But get over there and then have a different type of schedule on Saturday that we need to get used to. Obviously, they're coming off a big win at Oklahoma State, the hard place to go play, and you know they competed hard and won that game. Shoot, the week before they went to TCU and competed hard down there as well. So these guys don't care who they're playing; they're going to line up and play the same. They're well-coached, disciplined, hard-working bunch that continues to get better. You know, don't care if they're 2-3 or if they're 5-0. That doesn't make any difference to me or our team. You know, our job's to prepare the same way every week, and these guys pose a lot of challenges and respect their program and what they do. Offensively, they're searching a little bit for you know, kind of their identity a little bit, so to speak, because of some injury issues that you know everybody's got to deal with at times. Their two main old leading players in Kyle Kempt and David Montgomery have been dealing with injuries. We're expecting both those guys to be available and play. You know, they're really good players, especially Montgomery. I mean, he's an All-American NFL type player, and he's been banged up as of late, but we're expecting him to play. Played against us last year, both of them, so we know what type of players they are, and we'll prepare for those guys to be ready to go. Obviously, with the switch at quarterback last week, it poses different challenges for us defensively. With the Purdy kid in from Arizona, didn't go in and play like a freshman. I don't know if I've seen a game one freshman performance quite like that. You know, usually, you know, Texas Tech had to put their freshmen in game one and had some good performances, but it didn't happen. It wasn't in that first one, you know, like this Purdy guy did, and it's different. I mean, he runs around a lot better than Kempt does. That's just not what Kempt's game is. You know, the Nolan kid, number 4, that played a lot of games for him. You know, he was probably a little bit more of a thrower and a scrambler. But they're doing all kinds of quarterback run game with Purdy, which is a different challenge for us. You know, they look, with him in there, they look a lot like what we looked 3 years ago with Skyler as far as quarterback run game and, you know, different things that were coached up the appropriate way. So we'll have to figure that out when we get there. But we got a lot of good information to be able to coach over at this point. Their receiver, 18 Butler's making all kinds of plays. You know, it seems like he's got more than 18 for 372 and 4 touchdowns. It seems like he does because he's made a lot of big plays in a lot of big games. So he's a matchup nightmare. He's a lot like the Texas Tech guys were, you know, and the other guy, Eaton's another 6'4" guys. But them two tall guys on the outside pose the same challenges from a corners and a coverage perspective than the Texas Tech guys do. So we'll have to keep our eye on that. So they will keep getting better on offense. Last week's performance at Oklahoma State was impressive, and that's what we will be expecting moving forward. Defensively, a lot of respect for what they're doing. Coach Haycock's done a great job and has taken kind of you know, the odd stack with what we do here and kind of put his own spin on it. That it's not exactly what we're doing, but it's got some of those principles to it. Starts with their D-line. You know, they got 3 good D-line bodies, especially their nose, the Lima kid and the Bailey kid, the end and the nose. Those guys started against us last year, really good players. 2 of the 3 linebackers are back. And the 2 corners that started against us and got a lot of experience, it seems like they've been 3-4 year starters. The Payne kid, #1, and the Peavy kid, all-conference guy, #10. They're legit players. They're really good players. They lost 3 senior safeties. You know, they play a lot of the same coverage as we do, whether it's, you know, 3 guys back or 1 guy back, 2 guys down, or 2 guys back, 1 whole player. The 3 safeties they had last year is what made that defense go. Those guys are all new, but other guys have stepped up and they're playing as good or better defensively than what I thought they were last year. And it was a pretty good front last year, a pretty good defense last year. So we'll pose a lot of the same problems Kansas did last week, and they're a quality defense. Special teams lost a lot of their guys. Kicker's been solid. Punter, another Australian guy, has come in. They've been doing different things with them, do a really good job with the pooch punting stuff that we've seen a lot of these Australians do some roll punting, but do some traditional punting as well. So we got to get used to them spraying it everywhere, fielding that thing. And they've always been good, solid in the kicking game, and will be something that we will continue to focus on. They came in here hot last year, and I thought our team played really well against them. It's the same type team, same schemes, a lot of the same players will pose a lot of the same problems that they did last year. They'll play hard, and we're going to have to play hard for 4 quarters in order to give ourselves a chance. Take some questions.
Dana, Iowa State's offense struggled the first few games. They lose, as you said, then the injuries, and all of a sudden they explode offensively. On tape, did you see, was it just Purdy that led them, or what was it offensively they started to do well last week?
Yeah, they lost their coordinator. They had some coaching stuff. They had the injury to their main player, their quarterback. Like I said, their running back is so good, and they rely on him so much. They give it to him a lot. You don't have him, then you search. I've been in that situation before. These guys they've been good on offense. They know how to coach it up. I think it's just a matter of continuity more than anything. You know, I know Matt's kind of taken over the play calling, which he's obviously as good a coach as there is out there. So they'll keep getting better with it. You know, I think they found a good young quarterback that can make plays. He ran around. He made guys miss. He was accurate when he was throwing the ball. It was a good offensive performance. Whether that's going to be the same thing against us or whether they go in a different direction with Kemp, I don't know. We'll be ready for whatever they throw at us.
Coach, a bunch of tackles for losses. Is that effort, schemes? What do you see in there?
Them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're disruptive up front. You know, the biggest difference in what they're doing this year and what they did last year, their front's a lot better. So, you know, it's similar to our stuff. I mean, it really is. They're playing good up front. We're playing good up front with those 3, and they're creating some stuff with those 3, but then they bring second-level bodies from everywhere. Corners, safeties, linebackers. And you don't know where it's coming from, so you got to do a good job of IDing it. We got to do better up front, We have to do better up front as far as IDing it, because we had too many sacks, tackles for loss, disruption in the backfield last week that we didn't have in the previous 4 games. So we have got our work cut out for us offensively up front to figure out where that stuff's coming from, because they do a very nice job with it, as we do here on defense as well.
Last week it looked like Kansas used a robber on your RPO stuff, an extra guy. Do you anticipate that moving forward, seeing that more?
Yeah, it's all those second-level guys. The similarities coverage-wise and defensively with what Kansas and Iowa State are doing are pretty similar. So whatever worked for Kansas, I would assume that we're going to get it here this week.
Coach, can you give us a little bit of update on Ferns and Qualls? Are they practicing yet? Do you expect, are you still on the same timeline?
Yeah, we're going to get them. You know, I don't make any of those decisions. If they're practicing, I can assure you they'd be playing. So they're not cleared. They're not practicing. The closer we get to that 6-month mark, the better we'll all feel about it. It's getting close. I think we're about a month away.
T.J. Simmons stepped up this week. Has it gotten to the point where you feel like any of those 4 guys can be the guy in a given game?
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's I think, you know, T.J. probably played the best of all those guys last week. You know, was pretty consistent and made some plays. I mean, Gary and David do things that is just routine at this point. That's pretty good. But you know, Marcus had a couple of games where he played pretty good. Don't think he quite did what we need him to do last week. But TJ's been solid. I've been pleased with you know, the backups as well, which there's been plenty of years where I've been sitting here pulling what hair I have left out of it. But you know, with Dom Maiden's doing good, went in, made a big catch. Tevin Bush went in, made a couple of nice plays. You know, Sam James got some action for the first time all year. We'll see how that goes. But feel better about those guys in general. The tight ends take one of those guys off the field a lot, you know, so we don't have to play 4 all the time. Makes it harder for us to game plan against and all that when all those guys are capable of making a play, no doubt.
You've had 10 touchdown passes from 10 different guys, or 10 different guys catch touchdown passes this year. I think last year you had 5. Made all your touchdown catches. Is that a product of things that you were discussing in the offseason about tweaking things, and is that Will seeing the field better? What is a combination of, I guess?
Well, it's having more than 3 people is one. You know, last year we had you know, Karan and Gary and David out there about 95% of the time. It's the emergence of Marcus. It's TJ being eligible. It's, you know, backup receivers doing a better job and maturing and playing better and being guys that we can count on. And then it's getting our running backs involved as well. That's probably the biggest difference scheme-wise, is they got to account for those backs. We flipped it out there in the flat twice last week and scored. So, you know, you got to cover everybody. And that makes it hard defensively to defend us.
Again, not just because he scored, but what can Haskins do as far as being able to give you some flexibility? I'm pretty sure he might have to slot a bunch, which, you know, for West Coast.
He's he's a tweener right now. He's still young and still maturing, still growing, still filling out. Wesco is a dominating blocker. Giovanni's far from that. I mean, he's 40 pounds less, and you know, now Wesco's turning into a guy that we want to throw the ball to a good bit, so you got to account for him as well. I don't think he hasn't scored a touchdown, has he? So we'll get him on the touchdown train at some point. But Giovanni's more of a natural receiver. It has something to do because he's lighter, so he can run better. He's got great ball skills. You know, I like the 1-2 punch with those guys right now. You know, and you know, I think probably in 2 years, you know, the maturity of Giovanni should get him to where he can block as good as Wesco, and then we'll use younger guys that can come in that can. It's the natural progression of a tight end. When you want them 270 to where they can block people, but when you're 270 as a freshman, you probably can't run and catch very well.
You've talked before about your running game.
Hang on, I wasn't done with that question. So, so I think it's just the natural progression of that position, which makes that position hard to recruit, because you can't go recruit a guy and just plug him in year one, which has always been the problem. You know, we can find running backs and receivers and plug them in there year one. Can't do that at tight end. So having two young guys right now that we're currently redshirting will help us mature those guys into what they need to be down the road.
You've talked about your running game before. How critical is it to get that untracked early against Iowa State?
Critical, without a doubt. We ran the ball against them last year. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but I know I was happy with how we ran the ball against them last year. They give us favorable boxes, but they do a really nice job of filling gaps from second and third level defenders. You know, which usually means that you can get 5, but getting 8 to 10 is hard. But you got to be patient with that, and I thought we did an outstanding job last year of being patient with running the ball. Last week we did the same thing. I thought we did a good job of running the ball until we got into the red zone, and then we didn't do a good job of that.
Yeah.
Are you a different offense depending upon who your running back is?
Not really. Those guys all practice the same. You know, we don't call plays differently based on who's in the game. We really don't. Some guys get hot hands and you go with them. Some guys probably do a little better in maybe one specific area than the others, but not to where it's so drastic to where we where we really change what we do based on who that guy is. A lot of times Jake doesn't even know which one's in there because it can't matter. We train them all to be able to do the same stuff.
If you get Toyas back this week, what's the best way to employ Pitts after?
He's versatile, so we can do different things with him, and we should get Toyas back, and he should practice today, and he's a good player for us, and it gives us the ability to be able to play more than one person per spot. You know, we need to get Drake out there playing more, you know, so, you know, whether it's a corner safety rotation or, you know, just moving guys around, that's a heck of a problem to have.
You talked about Marcus Sims a great deal. What's the next step in his progression? Is it consistency? What would you like to see him do better next?
Yeah, I mean, obviously consistency and better production. You know, he dropped a couple of balls and didn't play very good last week. I mean, that's nothing to panic about. He practiced really good last week, so I would anticipate him practicing good this week, going out there and being ready to make a bunch of plays.
And yesterday on the Big 12 call, they asked you about the additional coaches and changing the way you coach. Along that line, but a little different, has it changed the way you watch film now? I mean, how do you handle film watching now as a head coach, and do the analysts do most of that for you?
No, having the analyst helps the specific sides, you know, because they can give you a report before you got to sit there and watch 12 hours of video. So that gets each side of the ball ahead to where they know what they got to look at, and then they can just start getting into the weeds on the specifics of game planning. One, I thought that was kind of an odd question that guy asked, but it's odd and random. But I've changed a little bit. You know, where in the past there's only so much. When I was a play caller, there's only so much times in the day to where you got to sit there and you got to get into the weeds as fast as you can. Mondays were an absolute nightmare for me because you would have to watch a lot of the video to figure out what you're going to focus on, and then you got to get into the weeds with it, to where now you get into the weeds quicker as a coordinator. So that's awesome. I don't have to do a lot of that stuff. You know, that's the assistants do a lot of that. So I focus more on how the opponent's specific games play out, from an offense, special teams, defense, you know, that sort of thing, you know, which has allowed me to be able to get a better feel for our opponent as far as the overall aspect of their team, you know, and how their games have unfolded. Whereas in the past, I did that when I could, because I had to just really focus on being in the weeds on offense.
And Josh Sims in year two, I'm Josh Sills,
I'm
sorry,
yep.
In year two as a player starter, what's your evaluation of him?
Doing good. I'm happy where Josh is at. He's big, and he gets kind of tired, and he gets kind of, he's not a lazy person, but he gets kind of lazy with some of his technique throughout the course of the game that he's got to, and that's typical for younger guys. So he's got to keep focusing on being a really good player the entire game. Don't lose focus and don't get lazy on us. We need you the whole time. His first halves have been generally better than the second halves.
Dana, this is a weird scheduling quirk, and I don't know if it means anything or if I offense noticed it or whatever, but your offense in Oklahoma State is still pretty similar, right? They played the team before you like 6 or 7 times this year. You know this. It seems like.
It changes about halfway through, though, I think. I understand. It probably, you're Oklahoma State.
The team that you play, they played the week before. So
Correct.
there's some continuity there, I'm guessing.
Correct.
Is it-
I don't think that goes all the way through, though. I know what you're saying. It usually, my experiences with it, and I'd have to look at the schedule to be exact with it, but usually, like the first half, you get it like that, and then the second half, it changes as far as who we're looking at. But you're right, that there's been years where, we've had like Kansas State as the one before us, which didn't do us a whole lot of good. And that was the one that was before us for about half the year, 3/4 of the year, whatever that mark was. It can be an advantage, but there's so many teams in the Big 12 now that are so similar, it's probably not that big of an advantage.